Welcome to DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next. The official podcast of the Diablo Valley College Alumni Association. As we celebrate 75 years of DVC's impact on education, careers, and community, we're honored to share the incredible journeys of alumni who've transformed their time on our vibrant campus into meaningful careers, community contributions, and personal success. Each Tuesday, we spotlight DVC alumni, from first-generation graduates to entrepreneurs, educators, and leaders who share the triumphs, challenges, and pivotal moments that shaped their lives. And on Thursdays, it's Resource Thursday. We dive into the programs, departments, and services that make DVC the supportive, dynamic community it is, exploring how they serve students and how you can connect with them. Whether you're a current student, recent graduate, or longtime alum, join us as we honor DVC's legacy and discover how our past continues to inspire the future. Thank you for being part of this journey. Be sure to tune in, subscribe, and celebrate with us. DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next. And now, join our host, Alumni Manager, Charlie Daly.
And we are live, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I am Tiffany Rhoe, and funnily enough, I actually met Charlie, I'm going to age myself, but like 30 years ago.
It's a little bit more than that, but we won't say. So I was thinking about that. I was like going, oh, man. No, it was, I guess it was about 30 years ago. So, yeah. So, yes, actually, she was, you were best friends with Megan Rourke. Shout out to Megan, and used to come along and cheer. It's like, yay!
Yes.
So when I was coaching softball with her mom.
So fun. And then we came across LinkedIn decades later. Again, sorry with the aging, but
that's okay.
Super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I am very excited to have you, and we'll go through the whole thing because part of it is because of what you have done over the last 12, 15 years. And so we'll talk about that because I think that's going to be super relevant. But first, let's talk about you grew up here in Pleasant Hill.
I did.
And take it away from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in Pleasant Hill. Actually graduated from College Park High. So
Go Falcons.
Always knew that DVC was in my future. It was right across the street. But I will share that, growing up, I always wanted to be in staffing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not in staffing. Always wanted to be in the medical field.
Yeah.
So always wanted to be a pediatric nurse practitioner. So growing up, I wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. Was really excited about what that looked like. So, went to school, graduated. And then I took some classes at DVC, really just, kind of the basics, English, did a fun kickboxing class.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, had some fun there. And then, I knew I didn't have the opportunity to go to a four-year college. It's not something I could afford or my parents could afford. And so I was okay with that. I knew that, the nursing is where I wanted to be. And so after a few classes at DVC, I went out to study for medical assisting. So got into that, went to Western Career College, which I think actually now is Carrington College.
Yes, and it's right next door to College Park.
Yeah, that's so funny. I loved it. It was a really fun program. I got in. I was like, okay, this is my start. It was great. But then unfortunately, after I graduated, getting a job was really hard. I had my medical assisting certificate, and that was great, but I didn't have the experience. So started looking for opportunities, and I got to join at a dialysis center. Kind of worked at a patient ward in the front, just, doing some admin. And then I had the opportunity to become a patient care technician, which is essentially taking people on dialysis, taking them off, monitoring them, with the assistance of an RN. First couple weeks, I realized how hard it was. I had no idea, as I developed these relationships, how hard it was going to be to see somebody come in for their treatment a couple times a week and then not show up. Couple days in, I watched somebody code and white sheet over and being rolled out. And at that moment, I was like, wow, this is not, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't know it was going to be that hard, you know? And so I did that for about 18 months. And then I had the opportunity to work for a cancer center as an actual medical assistant.
Oh, man.
Which, again, I knew it was going to be hard.
It was going to be hard. And then it's like, oh.
But it was much harder. So, and I went to school. I paid this money. You know, I really wanted to go through with this and really work as a medical assistant. So got in, I got to, you know, do the blood draws and the injections and patient check-ins, and even got to assist with some bone marrow biopsy procedures, which was a little,
ouch.
Yeah, like scary. But again, it was those relationships. You know, we've had these patients that would come in 2 or 3 times a week. And one patient I remember specifically, younger mom, probably mid-20s, had 2 young kids. And one day she just didn't show up for her treatment.
Oh, man.
And that was the moment that I said, this is not for me. Every loss was a personal loss for me. And I couldn't do that. It wasn't the joy of helping people that I wanted. You know, I had this mentality of like, I want to help people, and how do I leave them better than I found them? And I felt kind of helpless. Like, how am I helping people? It was just too hard.
John Madden, this will sound like a strange story, but it's similar. It's like he quit coaching because for him, it wasn't about the winning anymore, because he loved winning. Everybody loves winning, right? For him, he just couldn't deal with the loss anymore. You lose a game, and this is, you know, losing a game is just losing a game. It's not like losing a friend, you know, that's essentially what you were doing. But yeah, for him, it was just, he could not cope with losing anymore. And so he says, I just can't do this.
No, and I think it was really hard for me because my whole life, this is what I wanted to do. I know I said staffing. That was just me being nervous talking. But my whole life, I wanted to be in the medical field. I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to make a difference. So I was in this place where I'm like, paid this money my own. I did this. I went to school. This is what I wanted to do. What now? Like, now I have to change careers. Now I have to change focuses. Like, what does that look like? You know, so took a little bit of time off, you know, did some admin work, and then I kind of fell into staffing.
How did you do that?
You know, really funny story. Thank you to my stepmom, who actually knew somebody that was looking for somebody to work at a front desk for a staffing company. And so I still wasn't sure at that point what I wanted to do. So I took the job working at the front office, you know, checking candidates in, doing payroll. Kind of got the opportunity to start working as a staffing consultant. So interviewing people and helping them get prepared for their interviews with our clients, sending them out to jobs. And then I would say it really hit me about a year into staffing. I had found a role for a candidate, and they had come back to me 2 days later and brought me flowers and brought me some cupcakes. Very sweet gesture, but I said, you know, you didn't have to do this. I'm so happy for you. The client says you're doing great. We're so excited. And they looked at me and they said, you know, thank you for taking a chance and for giving me this opportunity. Not only did you help me find a role and my next career, but you helped me put food on my table. And in that moment, I was like, yes, this is it. Like, this is the impact that I can make. This is, you know, helping better people, helping make a change, different from what I imagined myself doing, but still so impactful. And I can remember like that, like it was yesterday. And so that was the moment that I was like, okay, this is for me. And so here I am 15 years later, still in staffing. And I've stayed because I love that.
Yeah. So you really had this. So for you, it was not so much the being a nurse. It was more about you love helping people, and so because usually we find that itch to scratch, we go, oh, it must be nursing, you know, or it must be being a doctor, and you really had to find out that there's a hard side to everything.
Absolutely. And I mean, to your point, it was the helping people. I've always been the nurturer. Like I worked in daycares and preschools, you know, throughout high school, always loved kids. And so I was like, kids and helping people, pediatric nurse practitioner, like it was a puzzle. It seemed to fit so well together. But again, I found staffing, and I did not grow up saying I want to be in staffing. Regardless of what I said earlier, you know, it happened. And I'm so glad that it did, because I have worked for some amazing companies and had some great leadership. And I'm really grateful to be where I am today because of those opportunities.
That's outstanding. So let's talk a little bit about that kind of journey through because you started off with the staffing agency, and that was Express Employment, I think.
Express Employment,
yes.
yeah.
And actually, I know Shelly, I think, is the owner. So
Yes.
she's fantastic.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if you're looking for a temp service, shout out to Shelly and Express Employment. So you started there, and you got the bug.
Yeah.
You figured out this is going to be my happy place. And so talk us through the rest of your journey as you went through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started with Express, and then I went on to Select Staffing, which is where I spent a big chunk of my career. So came in as a personnel supervisor, which is recruiter. They call them all different kinds of things. It was just me and my boss, Kai. It was a really small branch. We worked together, started to grow the team. Then I had the opportunity and was promoted to branch manager.
Oh.
And then again to area manager. So super fun. First year as branch manager, I had an amazing team, and we grew our branch 120% year over year, which
oh my
was
goodness.
Amazing. 3 years of President's Club in a row. We just had an amazing team. I was there for almost 7 years. Absolutely loved it. But I had great leadership. And in order for me to move, they had to move. And so it was one of those things where, my boss and his boss both knew that unless they left, there wasn't that next opportunity. And so I made a really hard decision to move and to go on to another opportunity with Volt, which was very different. I supported my leader, Joan, who was a VP. And we had about 12 offices across 7 states. So very different. So it was really cool because I've always been in California. So learning all of these labor laws and how different everything is in different states. California is much more strict when it comes to those employment laws.
So in order to kind of help interact with all these different offices, you actually had to learn the labor law in every place where there's an office. Is that right?
I didn't have to learn it specific. We had HR partners, but I had to know about it because what I was doing was supporting those offices and ensuring they had the recruiting plans, ensure that they were up and ready and had those pipelines to support whatever business they had. And business was different in every state, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think for me, that was the big challenge, but also really fun because everything was so different, and learning to work with those different businesses and working with all of those teams and really helping them grow was super fun. It was a really, really exciting opportunity. But the travel was fun until it wasn't fun anymore.
Been there. It's great. And then it's ugh.
Yeah. Oh, it's super fun. I have this hotel and I can, just watch TV and do my work and super exciting. But then it was I miss my son. I want to go home. I want to see my family. And so that was when I had taken the opportunity to really take my next step. And that's when I found Starbucks.
Oh, so everybody's going to want to hear about that. So you went from Volt to Starbucks. And so what was that transition like?
Well, I knew I wanted to work for Starbucks. I really got to that point where I was like, okay, this travel's not for me. And where do I want to be? And where's the company that I want to work for? I'm ready to find my career. So I started, researching companies, figuring out what their cultures were, what their values were, what aligned with what I was looking for. Right. And so one of my best friends, she worked for Starbucks and she was a district manager and she always said amazing things about the company. And in my last role at Volt, funnily enough, when I wasn't traveling, I had the opportunity to work remotely. And I would always find myself in a Starbucks. Some days I'd get in my car, Charlie, and I'd just show up at a Starbucks and I didn't even realize that's where I was going because I loved being in Starbucks. And so I was like, this is where I want to be. This is a company I want to work for. If the interaction as a customer is this great, hire me. Where do I sign on the dotted line? So applied for a couple roles. Didn't make much traction. And so it was it's time to really start that networking piece. So I connected with as many people as I could at Starbucks. My last manager, Jody, I kind of stalked her. I'm sure she'll admit that. I reached out over and over again. We had these connections. I think probably it was 5 or 6 months we connected, having these conversations until something came to fruition. And so super excited to join that team. I was like, this is where I want to be. Loved the culture, loved the team, the environment, everything about the company. And really, I thought that's where I was going to, retire. My goal was to start as a recruiter and grow my way up through the company. But unfortunately, I got laid off.
Oh.
And that was a really hard hit for me in more ways than one. First of all, I was like, this is it for me. I don't have to look for a job again. This is where I want to be. I'm going to grow. People would say, where are you going to be in 20 years? And I would say, here. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to be here because this is where I want to be. So back to that, like, okay, I have to start over again. Timing was rough too. I had bought a house. I think I signed my closing docs like 2 weeks before I had gotten laid off. So
Ouch.
It was like, okay, this is going to be rough. How do I navigate this?
Yeah. Well, let's take a moment to talk about that, because I know I've been laid off a few times, man, and it can be soul crushing, because I know when I've had it happen to me, sometimes it's been like, yeah, that's fine, I'll go find something else, and then there's been times where it's just like, it was kind of like, this is my forever job, and then now I'm pounding the pavement, and you got to take that time to kind of regroup. So what was that time period for you like?
It was a busy time. Again, I just moved into my house. And so I was like, okay, this is a hard hit. I actually got the call on my son's 10th birthday. So that was just like, insult to injury, right? It happens. And so I just took some time to think about like, what's next? Like, left the company in great terms, had nothing but good things to say about them. But I had to figure out what was next. But I didn't want to rush into that, because for me, that was where I was going to be. That was my career. I didn't want to go find a job for the sake of having a job. So really for me, I had to think about that. It was an opportunity for me to get settled into my house, an opportunity to spend some time with my son during the summer, which was great because,
Yep.
I'm not a teacher, so I don't get that summer off.
Yep.
Usually I'm working. So he was really excited about that. But for me, I knew I still wanted to be in staffing. I still wanted to help people find their roles. And so, I updated my LinkedIn. I started, putting feelers out there, but really took some time to figure out what that next step was, because I wanted to make sure it was the best career move for me.
Okay. So, and we're going to come back to that, because I know like when I was not this position, but the position before, is like I was using my LinkedIn profile at that point to move, that particular career forward, but it wasn't like something to move me forward. Mm-hmm. And when I left that company, it was like one of those things like, oh, okay. I basically had neglected my LinkedIn for what I really needed to be using it for. So, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So then you decided, okay, now it's time to kind of get things going, and you've had a busy fall.
I have. So spent the summer with my son. Unfortunately, kind of as summer was closing out, my mother got sick. And then shortly after, my brother was involved in a serious mountain biking accident and broke his neck. Very grateful he was okay, not paralyzed, anything like that. But that was like okay, this is going on a pause again, and I need to take this time to be with my family. My mom passed away in December. And so that was, a very hard time for me. It was the holidays. Mm-hmm. And so I took that time to be with my family. My mom was in Portland when she was sick. My brother and sister are both in Portland. So for me, it was just about spending that time with family, and taking that time to be with them, during a time that was difficult. Not just emotionally, financially, like all of the things, right? Everything that I was experiencing was kind of just coming together. And I had to take a moment to say, okay, what's next? And how do I navigate this? Because it was a lot of challenges, like all in one space. And so really spent that time with my family. And then come first of the year, I was like, okay, now we're in this place where things aren't as slow. November, December, you don't see a lot of hires.
Nobody's going to talk to you.
Yeah. And
just,
so like,
I know that it's like here at the college, it's like everything stops. And I know back in the days when you're looking for work, anything after October 31st, October's a little dicey. Anything after that, nobody's going to hire you. It's like, hey, give us a call in January,
Yeah. But that didn't mean that I couldn't put the work in, right? So to your point about the LinkedIn, it was like I had to start making those changes, making those connections, doing those introductions. But really, I would say January is where I hit it really hard as far as what am I going to do differently? There are so many jobs out there to apply for, but there are 10 times, 100 times as candidates. And so it's like, how do you set yourself apart?
So we're gonna now move on to that section, because I think this is really important. This is part of the reason I was so excited about having you come in here. Is I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of, because you've been on both sides of the I'm looking for a job, right? You're looking for a candidate, and then you're looking for a job. So when you were a recruiter, did you use LinkedIn a lot, or how did you?
Absolutely. So definitely on LinkedIn, connecting with candidates. We set up pipelines, use LinkedIn Recruiter, connecting with candidates. And so I know how important that is. But I also know the amount of in-mail that you get, right?
Yes.
Especially working for a name like Starbucks, right? There were constantly candidates reaching out saying, hey, I want to work for Starbucks. Hey, I want to work for Starbucks. And so we had a process, and I would share with them what that looked like, so that they understood what that process looks like. I can't give you the name of a hiring manager and send you through, but I can encourage you to search on LinkedIn and connect with people and apply and send those messages, because that's how I got my opportunity at Starbucks, right? And so knowing that, like, as I go in, I'm like, oh, man. And it's so funny because I've been doing this for 15 years, and I was like, okay, my resume is great. And I was like, but is it? Like, I've been doing this. And so I'm like, what am I not seeing that somebody else could be seeing? Because I'm so used to doing it for other people, but doing it for myself, I was like, I can't do this. Like, so it was just interesting to be in the other seat when I've been on the other side of it for so long.
So what are some tips that somebody could do with like their LinkedIn or their opportunity to kind of like maybe stand out a little bit, or at least get noticed? I mean, what are some things that, I'm reaching out to a recruiter. Yes, there's a process, but what could make me maybe slightly more likely to have somebody at least pick up the phone, or I don't know if anybody even does that anymore, but shoot an email or an in-mail?
Absolutely. I would say, like, take a good hard look at your LinkedIn. Like, is your profile updated? Is your picture 10 years ago? Is your headline recent? Really go in there, figure out what it is that you want to do, highlight those skills, and put that on your LinkedIn. Make sure your work experience is in there. Make sure that if you have done some work recently and you can get some recommendations, that's something I worked on recently. Get recommendations. People are looking at your LinkedIn, and that's a really good way to set yourself apart, is ensuring that that's updated. Because if you connect with someone, the first thing that they're going to go do is look at your profile, and they're going to say, okay, this profile doesn't look very accurate. Maybe you haven't posted in 4 years. How are you setting yourself apart and branding?
So one of the things, and I said this in the email, in the in-mail that I sent you, is it was something you post. You post a couple times a week, I think, 2-3 times a week. But you're posting, like one of it, I think the one that caught my eye was one that you had taken what somebody else had written and then written a commentary on it. I was like, oh. And then I started looking at your other stuff. So again, it was that caught my eye. And talk just for a minute about that, because it's like, otherwise it's like, hey, glad to be here, congratulations, all that stuff. All that stuff is great. But I think having some sort of something to say is probably.
Absolutely. How are you creating value, right? So what are you sharing that other people in your network are looking at, whether it's a candidate or a hiring manager? Because if you look, everybody that you're linked in with, they can see when you comment. So if you comment on something of mine and you're connected with 17 hiring managers, they're going to see that and they're going to look at that comment. So how are you interacting and sharing advice? Like, think about something that you've done in your career that's been impactful. How can you share that with your LinkedIn network? How can you congratulate someone on a job? Because at the end of the day, it's those relationships and that networking that's going to set you apart. If you're one of 300 applicants that just applied for a role on LinkedIn and you're connected with that manager and they've seen that you've been active on LinkedIn.
Hey, I know that name.
I know that name. Wait, Charlie, he posted that article about how to be proactive in LinkedIn, he shared some really good tips on how to apply for a job or how to set myself apart in an interview. Like, that's how you stand out.
Well, mine would be what we have clubs here at DVC, and one of my favorite clubs, and I tell everybody about it, is the Cheese Club. And everybody laughs, and it's fun. But the thing that's amazing to me is these guys started it kind of on a lark. They're super organized about it. You know, they have it very well set up, and they're building something that they want to be a legacy to where it's like it continues on beyond. They didn't do it just because they need it for their resume. But again, it's fun, and it's probably the most somebody's going to give me a bad time about this, but it's probably the most popular club here on the campus. And I think that that's one of the things. I was talking to Josh, the guy who started it, him and another gentleman who's, this is going to kill me, but and that my thing is put that on your resume, put that on your LinkedIn, because that stuff matters, because it shows leadership and it shows, you're able to plan something and make something happen. So we may have you do like a LinkedIn workshop for our folks. So that could be a fun thing. So you went from, this is the side that you use LinkedIn on, and now you're on the other side. And talk about that process a little bit. So you talked about your resume, and you're like, is this really good? So what did you do to address that?
I had looked at some resources, and I just had somebody take a look at it and say, hey, is there something that you're seeing that I'm not? And just made a few changes. And then from there, it was really about the networking piece, because I know how many emails I would get working for Starbucks. And so I knew that these hiring managers are getting the same amount. And so for me, it was like I would apply for a job. I would follow up with a hiring manager. But on top of that, I spend probably 4 or 5 hours a day networking, whether that's sending emails, researching companies, sending cover letters, and then sending out these emails to these companies that I want to work for. So doing a lot of research. Where do I want to be? Connecting with those managers. And it's not a one and done. Hey, my name's Tiffany. Here's my background. Okay, great. They get 1,000 of those messages a day. Sending a follow-up. And I'll tell you, it was getting a little bit discouraging, because probably over the last couple weeks, I'll say I sent out over 300 messages. But this last week or so, I was on my 3rd follow-up. And so I had 2 great calls last week with like directors of recruiting who said, hey, I'd love the opportunity to connect with you. They don't have any current roles, but we had great conversations. I shared my background. They wanted to send my resume on. That had nothing to do with an open position. I didn't apply. It was being persistent and highlighting what I could bring to their organization and how I could be impactful, which resulted in that conversation, which will hopefully result in more conversations. Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big believer in networking. I think it is a golden art, and there's a certain amount of science to it, but it's just, most of it is just, you got to be persistent. And so how did you determine what you bring to the organization? Because that's one of the things that I think too often it's like we go, well, I show up on time. Okay, that's great. That's a good start. But tell us, what process did you go through to kind of like go, okay, what are my skill sets that I'm going to bring that's going to make you want to hire me?
Absolutely. So I look at my resume, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going on 15 years this year that I've been in staffing. So what I did was I said, okay, here's my 15 years. What are some of the things that I've accomplished? What are some of those highlights? Because again, you send an email, a message, it's really long. You don't want people to get lost in that first couple sentences. So finding some of those key pieces. And then I was really, when I was looking at the people that I was connecting with, I was being super mindful of the people that I was connecting with. So I was connecting with directors of recruiting, VPs of recruiting, looking at those companies and knowing what they were looking for. And that's what I was sharing. I was sharing with them my expertise as it relates to what they're doing as an organization to ensure that they're looking at this, right? It's like you're looking on a menu and you're like, what do I want? And they're like, that's what I want. And wait, she has that? Mm-hmm. When? And so I think those are the connections that I've made where those managers have reached back out to me like, hey, love your skill set, not hiring now, but send me your resume, or hey, reach out to this person.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. So if someone was starting out, let's imagine for a moment, it's like I've never, I'm just getting out of school. I've done the Year Up program or something like that. I have my no experience. You went down that road before.
Mm-hmm.
Where would be a good place to start? It's like you want to get your foot in the door. I mean, how would you attract some attention at that point?
I would say think about where you want to be, right? So really start with that basics of your LinkedIn profile. Go ahead and update your headline. Make sure that it's catchy. Make sure you have any experience. So whether that's maybe you volunteered somewhere, that's relevant. Get those recommendations, even if it's from one of your professors, highlight what you've done and put that on there. And then there's learnings that you can take. So right now I'm taking a bunch of LinkedIn learnings and adding those to my profiles. So whatever that you can do to make yourself shine. And then again, it's that networking. So if this is the field I want to be in, how am I connecting with people that align with where I want to be and doing those introductions, and then creating a presence on LinkedIn. Whatever value you can bring that people are going to start interacting with, have that name be known. I recently started doing Motivation Monday and Fun Fact Friday, and like hashtag Tiffany Talks, which at first I was like, I don't know how I feel about
that's
that.
Pretty good.
But now it's like people are going to look for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's my hope, is that there's someone somewhere, even if it's one person that's like, that was really impactful. I appreciated that.
See, you're on a podcast because of that.
Well, I guess it worked. I'll take it. I'll take it.
And it wasn't necessarily hashtag Tiffany, Tiffany, what was it, Tiffany Talks?
Tiffany Talks. I added that afterwards.
Okay. But I actually kind of like that. It's short. The biggest problem I think with people when they tag stuff or they brand stuff is they make it too long because they try to tell the whole story in it rather than just catching your attention, It's kind of like my wife has a pen set that she uses. She does coloring and stuff like that. And there's all these colors in there. They're all pretty, but they all got different names. And it's like, I don't know, this is red and that's also red and it's kind of a different red. And so I'm more the give it a simple thing and give it a simple tagline. So I think that's brilliant. So are there any other things that you'd like to pass along? I've got a kind of like a whole thought process on things that we're going to have you set up to do. But so what are maybe one or two other tips maybe somebody could have if they're out there? I know persistence is going to be the one. So how long is it usually taking you to kind of turn over the stone as far as going from, okay, I need a job to, okay, you got an offer in your in basket?
It's really hard to put a time frame on that. I think there's so many different variables when you look at that, right? What is your industry? What's the unemployment rate? And like how many people are looking in your field? Right now, I'm in talent acquisition, and a lot of the roles are remote, okay? Who doesn't want a remote role, right? So that's a lot harder to find than somebody who could be in a different field. So again, it's really hard to put a time frame on that, but I would say don't put all your eggs in one basket. Okay. When I had first started looking, I had a couple conversations and I got really excited about it and I let my foot off the gas a little bit. And that was a poor choice on my part because I was like, these are great conversations. I'm really excited. Whereas I should have continued to push myself along, and not just use one resource. LinkedIn is great, but there are so many other resources out there. There's a platform called Welcome to the Jungle.
Oh,
I know. I had recently heard about it. My cousin had told me about it. Indeed, ZipRecruiter, like local colleges. There are so many things that you can do. And also there are so many companies that don't post on LinkedIn. So like my suggestion is, what do you want to do and where do you want to work? Find your top 10 companies, set up career alerts, because those are the companies that you're not going to have hundreds and hundreds of people applying. If you go on LinkedIn and see easy apply, sometimes I'll go on there and I'm just curious. The position was posted 40 minutes ago and there's already over 100 applicants because it's easy. They push a button. So like, it's not going to be easy to find your role. That's not to say don't apply for those roles, but you have to spread yourself all over different channels in order to get that next step. And don't get discouraged. I get it. This has been so hard for me. This is the first time I've ever been laid off in my career. And so it's been like, okay, I'm on the other side and this is different. And I know what those recruiters are looking for because I've been in that seat. So how do I do things differently? But It's not one thing. I can't tell you it's one thing. It's all of the things combined. It's that personal branding. It's different resources. It's connecting and not letting off the gas just because you had a good conversation. Like, make sure that you're interviewing the company just like they're interviewing you. And there are so many resources out there around tips to interview and how to fix your resume. And so really ensuring that people understand what those resources are, because you don't have to go spend a bunch of money. There's a lot of resources at your fingertips that can help you to be successful and taking that next step.
Well, and one of them is actually here at DVC. If you have taken one class, you're a DVC alum. And so you then are qualified for career services, which they'll help you with cover letters, with resume tips, with mock interviews, with all sorts of things. And so, yes, I mean, you're probably a little further along than a lot of people, but there are a tremendous number of resources here at DVC and at most colleges. You know, they have especially in the Contra Costa Community College District. Well, cool. Well, this has been really exciting. I'm going to talk you into being in our speakers bureau, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And I'm going to let Miriam know also that you could be available, because I think she would love you. I think her students would love your talk. So, and with that, I think we're going to wrap it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me today, Charlie. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming in and braving the rain.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next. The official podcast of the Diablo Valley College Alumni Association, celebrating 75 years of DVC's incredible impact on education, careers, and community. We hope today's episode gave you valuable insights into the journeys of our alumni and the powerful resources available at DVC. Don't forget to join us every Tuesday for inspiring alumni stories, and on Resource Thursdays, where we spotlight DVC's departments and services, showing you how they're shaping student success. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and exploring the connections that make DVC's legacy so special. And remember, DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next.